Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to World of Warships for this special Friday edition video featuring the Tier 10 Italian battleship, the Ruggiero di Lauria. Americans just say Lori. Probably not. There might be some Italians raging in chat, but this is a special video in terms of it was a video request, as I had a little bit of a special thing going on to whoever be my first patron supporter, which I think happened back in December or November, something like that, that I would do a video, whatever they would want for me to feature on the channel. So congrats Unsinkable for that honor, where he asked if I would feature the Lauria. And so I was like, for sure, and I'll even throw in the upgrading commander build video with it. And also just a thanks to other Patreon supporters who have come on since. But I'm not going to talk about Patreon, I'm going to talk about the Lauria. Now, I'm going to go ahead and throw up in the top right corner of the screen here the armament layout, because it's something I just need to mention in general, just because she has a bit of an interesting armor scheme, especially when we talk about her Citadel armor. But her armor belt for the Citadel armor is 457mm, which then goes up into a 350mm, which then goes up into 150mm. And then in the midsection of her ship, she has 32mm deck plating, but in the midsection, it's 120mm. And then there's this like little portion that's actually 170mm as well. So we'll talk more about the armor in the upgrade commander build video tomorrow. But here we are in Random's battle. And just to reference the matchmaker is that there are 4 destroyers on each team. So there's actually going to be a fair number of destroyers. As you can see, we have 3 on this flank. And so I'm guessing maybe there's going to be at least 2, if not 3 over here. And it's important here, and I want to state this to you battleship players, do what you can to help your destroyer players out in being able to whittle down the hit points of enemy destroyers, because, you know, being able to give them a leg up on the gun fighting engagements of the enemy destroyers they go up against, you know, it might be the difference between life and death, as we overlead the Illinois as he's reversing there. But it might be the difference between life and death for them. So, you know, if you really want to be successful in World of Warships, keeping your destroyers alive is really great. Granted, some destroyer players, of course, just throw their life away, and there's nothing you can do about it. With that being said, we're going to be set up here for just a little bit and trying to provide some support here on the Charlie Cap. I'm going to reverse in, getting closer to this island here, and maybe utilizing some of it for island cover. But let's start talking about the ship. Now, one of the things that makes the Lauria rather interesting is the fact that she's the first Italian battleship with having 457mm guns. And not only does she just have the 457mm guns, the armor piercing, but she has 457mm semi-armor piercing shells. So we're going to talk about the guns here just a little bit, and then we'll talk about some other things as well. But these guns are really fun. They have very similar dispersion to Thunderer guns, and actually, speaking of which, they are identical to the Thunderer's guns. They match identical. The only difference to Thunder, and if you're not sure what Thunder is, it's a tier 10 premium British battleship with also 8 457mm guns. The only difference is the fuse time on the AP shells. The fuse time here is 0. Let me pull that up, make sure I say it right. 0.015 seconds, where on Thunder there's 0.033 seconds. So basically you have a reduced fuse time, so your shells are not as likely to overpin, let's say, a broadside Minotaur, as an example, and just harmlessly passing through the Citadel without arming. Now, in terms of exactly identical AP characteristics, they're the exact same as St. Vincent, because St. Vincent also has the reduced fuse time. So armor piercing is all the same there, but that also does mean we're getting 14,900 maximum AP shell damage when we do get Citadel hits. But I digress. Let's talk about the semi-armor piercing a little bit more. because you can get some nasty sap salvos with this ship. So I think I'll just throw a couple clips up here in the top right corner of the screen, perhaps. The max sap salvo I've had out of the Lauria, I think, has been almost 25,000. I might have had a 26, but I don't think I was recording that game. But I have had a 25,000 sap salvo. And then I've had a lot of the 21, 22, 23,000 sap salvos as well. Particularly when the shells are able to land really well across the, let's say, maybe the upper belt or the superstructure of a battleship. Especially battle cruisers and cruisers in general are really going to suffer with Lauria's semi-armor piercing, which has the ability to penetrate 114 millimeters. So, you know, there's nothing a Bowen, Salem, or Des Moines can do. I've had Salems for some reason think they can battle tank me, and it's like, bro, no. Also, I think for the fact that with the armor piercing, as I want to verify this, the AP can overmatch 30 millimeter plating as well. So, I mean, she's a very scary threat to any cruiser she faces, since these are 457 millimeter guns. I mean, almost 18-inch guns. I mean, like 17.9, where like Yamato has the 460, so she does get that 32 millimeter overmatch, where we don't get that here with the 457 millimeter guns. In addition to talking about that, the range with these semi-armor piercing guns, which, by the way, if you do get a full hit, well, they do, like, the damage they do here is 16,600. That's just a lot, right? Even more than the armor piercing if you get that full work out of it. But the dispersion is the same as Thunder. There is one difference though. The Sigma on Thunder is 1.9. Here on the Lauria, it's 1.8. But the higher the Sigma, the better. But you have a better horizontal and vertical dispersion compared to the Thunderer. So they trade off about the same. I mean, sometimes I feel that the guns have been a bit trollish at times, which happens with RNG, so on and so forth. But in general, they're just really great performing guns. Unless you're dealing with something Russian that's a bit bow on and very tanky, like a Stalingrad with its very tanky guns and just, yeah, armor characteristics, a bit of a struggle here. So we cleared up at C, Delta cap, and so I've now repositioned myself towards the Charlie cap. Because, you know, it felt like my team was going to be able to push through D, so I said, let's just start moving over here and help them. And I'm going to get frustrated with our two battleship players and cruiser players off here to the right of the screen, and you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. I can point it out later on. Now, other things that's really great about the Lauria, I'm going to get into her cons. She does have this great concealment, 12.3 kilometer, which again would be the same as the Thunder. Now, I'm going to make a lot of references there. I mean, you can see I already have. Just because, I mean, this feels like a SAP Thunder. I think other WoW's content creators have even said that. But just from a lot of my battles that I played the last few days, I very much get to that embodiment, that understanding that that's really quite accurate. I mean, between the guns, between the not armor scheme, but between the layout of the concealment, the guns, and then there's also, what else is it that they share? The concealment. Yeah, there's just a lot of cross-references there, except, of course, you know, the AA sucks on the ship, which we will talk about as well. But this basically feels very similar to Thunder, and in another sense, she feels similar to Conqueror. In another sense, you know, there are maybe some things you can find.
The ship is on fire.
No, I'm not going to say that one. But in terms of the play style, this ship plays most similar to the Thunder and Conqueror, is what I'd say. And I will get into what I recommend the ship for the steel, which, let me pull up how much steel this ship does cost. It's 31,000 steel, so I'll save that for the end, whether or not I recommend this ship. So, moving on swiftly, I'm going to reference the pros and cons here on the WoW's wiki, just to keep us going here so you get a better understanding of the ship. Semi-armor piercing main battery shells with improved penetration angles. That's really great. So you're going to see us definitely be working that when we are able to get even targets you think they're angled enough, and we still do a lot of damage on them. You have the improved main battery dispersion, your semi-armor piercing AP over matched 30mm plating, you have the short fuse AP times. Your secondaries fire shaft cells, but they're not like phenomenal or great or anything, or have like an improved dispersion. I think they pin a 38mm, if I remember correctly, and I just want to check that. Yeah, they can pin up to 38mm. She's a fast battleship. If you take Sarah Mike flag, you will get her up from 35 knots to 36.75 knots. And then if you take something like Brisk, you will have, I think, 40 knots where it is. Excellent concealment with 12.3, and repair party heals more citadel damage. Now, as you can see here, I'm pinging the map because I'm a little frustrated with both of our battleships and cruiser player because they're all like kind of huddling together, and I'm trying to get them to do a crossfire on Stalingrad. If one would go farther out to, let's say, C2 as an example, or maybe even C3, we could continue focusing that Stalingrad down. So they're hurting a lot is what they're doing right now. But I think I also missed out that there's a bit of a Shimakaze threat over there, so I've been mostly focusing more towards the center of the screen here. Before I talk about the cons, I need to cover what's happening here. Is that we do have Sansonetti, Luigi Sansonetti, as our unique commander, which he has two unique traits, talents that help us out here. So I'm going to actually pull that up right now so I can reference those skills, which you just see the first one activating here, being the main battery firing range extended as that Shimakaze player pops up as our Yamagiri picks him up. But with Luigi Sansonetti, as I scroll down to find him, he actually has three talents. The two that we activate in this match, spoiler alert, is the Far Reach talent, which activates on destruction of an enemy ship, extends the main gun range plus 8%. So that's something I'm not referenced yet, and that's the gun range here on the Lauria, which is 19.25 kilometers, which is a little bit of frustrating, not gonna lie, but you do get a spotter plane to help out. Once you do pick up, if you're able to get a kill and activate that talent, you can see it blooms us up to 20.8, which honestly is even a bit more comfortable. As I take range on the 6th slot, I take the reload, just because it's phenomenal as our herd continues to sail away. The other talent, which we're going to get ready to activate here, is the Rapid Fire talent, which activates upon earning the Confederate achievement, reduces the reload time of this main battery guns by negative 15%, as we have this Bourgogne coming out here, and I'm going to try to take on utilizing armor piercing here, which this is going to give you a good example about the angling and improved penetration with the sap. So first off, we're going to use the armor piercing. Now, I'm enough far forward enough, and he's just enough behind us, that we're not going to get a full AP salvo here as we activate the Confederate talent. So you see we're down over 12,000 there. And now I'm switching back into the semi-armor piercing because I'm like, he's just angled just enough. Let's just switch back into the sap, and we're still maintaining that same angling even as he scoots forward a little bit and I'm scooting forward a little bit. And here you're going to see the sap, which is over 16,000 damage. So we probably would have actually been better sticking with the sap for that first salvo there. As the Shimakaze comes in, I'm holding my, no need to DCP, damage control party for one fire, as I was hanging on to it. That's why we used the heal already, because I know Shimakaze's around. But we're going to stay here and do what we can to work over this Bourgogne, which moved forward a little bit with his engine boost. So unfortunately, I did land that salvo too far behind him and not aiming well. But he goes down to the Kearsarge, and we're going to wait for the Shimakaze to kind of finish his turn here. So I'm like, yeah, he goes there. He straightens out a little bit, and then he decides to continue to turn here and boarding, I think, the other salvo, and we pick him off there. Now, the cons for this ship is that it has low health. So you actually have lower health than the Thunderer. So your total hit points is 79,200, where something like Thunderer has 82,900. You're vulnerable. You have a bit of an oddly shaped citadel. I don't know how entirely I agree with that. I mean, it is a very odd shaped citadel, which we'll get into tomorrow. But I've had, like, of the games I've played, I've had over 12 or 13 where I've consistently do over 2 million potential damage, tanking over 2 million potential damage. So as long as you're angling well, which Thunder and Conquer both teach you to do quite well, because the ships aren't really that... There's not a lot going on. Guns and armor. You angle, you get a lot out of it. You have that shorter main battery range, as I referenced, which with having Sansonetti, you know, it doesn't cost anything to switch Sansonetti over here to the Lauria since she is a premium ship. So that's very, very much helpful. You have ineffective secondaries, and one of the big things, this is probably beyond having a low hit point pool, the thing that was the worst to me about the Lauria is her AA defenses. I honestly would love to see Lauria get a slight hit point buff, putting her up over 80,000, 83, 84, 85, me personally. But her AA defenses are just terrible. Now I talk about her AA defenses. I will pull up this fancy thing here. And her AA is among the tier 10 battleships, it's the third worst in the game. Only slightly beating out the ARC Yamato and Yamato. So basically the second worst AA in the game for a tier 10 battleship. Her AA strength is a rating of like 46 when looking at the ship tool. Her range, 4.6 kilometer AA, and she just really lackluster overall with her AA strength. I mean, even her flak strength is a rating of 11, which is like really bad. So the AA is just garbage. If you get focused out by a CV, even a tier 8 CV, you will suffer. Like, there's just nothing you can do in that regard, except just trying to manage your damage control party, your repair party, and utilizing your rudder to hopefully avoid, you know, torpedoes, airstrikes, you know, so on and so forth, rocket attack strikes. So don't rely on her AA. You don't want, if a CV starts focusing you, and let's say you're solo out on a flank and you have like a destroyer or cruiser around, you know, you're just probably going to want to have to disengage. A carrier will kill a game for you really fast here. Now, in terms of her ASW, since we're talking about the air cancer, let's talk about the beneath the sea cancer of submarines. You do actually have pretty good ASW here. You have a range of 11 kilometers, which is fantastic and very helpful. And you get 2 attacks. So number or 2 charges, I guess you should say. So that's really helpful here. Other thing in general, talking about the overall rating of this ship, is to talk about her AP DPM, which actually, of 28 battleships in the game of tier 10, she ranks 25th. She barely beats out the Kremlin, like by just over 1,000. So this isn't a ship that's phenomenal when it comes to just in general AP performance. Now, among the tier 10 battleships in the game, she's only of 3 that have the SAP. And she, like, compared to Colombo does 324,000 SAP damage, where Lauria does 265,000 SAP damage overall. And you don't get high explosive, and even your secondaries are SAP. So if you're gonna talk about HE performance, the only HE performance you're gonna get is setting a sub on fire with wait. No, that's not accurate. You will. I try to remember if you're ASW. I know it causes floodings, but I don't know if that causes fires. Maybe it doesn't. I don't remember. It's annoying to try to keep track of everything in this game, so maybe completely scratch that comment there. But then going on to talk about maybe a little more of her general parameters, is that her rudder shift time, let's see here, in terms of worse in the game, she is actually mid-pack with her rudder shift. If you don't build into it, it's actually 13. Ranks 13th out of 28. So she has a 17-second rudder shift time, which is the same as St. Vincent's as an example. Your turning radius is also not so great. It lands 23 of 28 at 1,000 meters, so it just barely beats out Preußen, Slava, Kremlin, and Incomparable. And then your Citadel repair damage, and wanting to compare that, she's actually ties for second with the Thunderer. So she has a 33% Citadel repair damage, where Utah and Vermont have a 50%. Sorry, I think Utah's one of the ships still in testing, but they have it listed here in the game. So technically number 3, since Utah isn't officially around. And beyond that, what else to talk about with the Lauria? I will go over the commander build tomorrow. We did reference the spotter plane, which is actually great, and that should fix the ship. I think the last thing I really need to hit on is, do I recommend the Ruggiero di Lauria, if I'm even pronouncing that correctly? If you have this steel, which again, it costs 31,000 steel, or if you utilize a coupon, which would take 25% off, as I'm going to pull up my calculator here, you would get the ship down to a cost of 23,250, which I do always recommend trying to use coupons for steel versus coal ships. If you have an abundance of steel and you don't have like a lot of the other better steel ships, like I would say, you know, Bourgogne, Stalingrad. There's several other good steel ships I would pick up before picking up the Lauria. And I don't think you're missing out on a lot here, because mainly this is my reasoning, okay? In terms of her damage performance, I mean, she's low compared to a lot of ships in the game. I mean, even whether you're comparing her sap or her armor piercing, you don't have no chances of setting fires because of sap and AP. Like, I prefer playing Conqueror over Lauria. I prefer playing Thunder over Lauria. You know, Thunder has a really good AA, which, if I was just to reference that, pull it up here. AA strength, and I'll find the Thunder. I don't know how good, but I know it's better than Lauria. Yeah, she ranks 20th of 28, so a little bit better, and you also actually get defensive AA with Thunder, if I remember correctly. You have better AA performance overall with Thunder, which, I mean, you're going to see tier 10 CVs, tier 8 CVs, super CVs, but one of her trade-offs there would be talking about the airstrike range, which isn't as hot on Thunder, if I remember correctly, unless they're like, nope, we're going to give an exception here. No, they did. It's 11 kilometer also there. I thought it was shorter. I'm probably got that confused with Ohio. So yeah, so scratch that comment. But yeah, I mean, for me, I would honestly just assume rather playing Conqueror first and then Thunderer. You get a lot more hit points with both those ships, better AA, and you know, the high explosive, British high explosive is just as good, and you're getting fire damage as well. So both of those ships are better. I mean, Thunder is not available in the game anymore, but I wouldn't say that you should go out of your way to get Lauria. I think really the selling point with Lauria, as I wrap this game up, is just talking about how awesome the sap damage she does. I mean, she's got among the biggest. They have these 457 millimeter sap guns. I mean, you're just going to pin more than what you could with the Christopher Colombo, as an example, even though you get even more guns with Colombo than you do here on Lauria, which I'm actually just going to pull up Colombo real quick so I can recall the size of her guns. I want to make sure I say it right. Yeah, 381 millimeter guns. In those sap pins, 96 millimeter, more than you're getting 114 millimeter with Lauria, so it's not a huge, crazy difference, but I mean, you go from 12,500 sap shell damage to, what does I say, 16,600 sap shell damage. So it would be a steel ship, I would say, just get later on, like definitely pick up Stalingrad, pick up Bourgogne. I'm trying to remember, is Ragnar a steel ship? It sounds like it is, and I think I have another steel ship before I finally picked up the Lauria. But she has a consistent performance, you know. Even when we're talking about aiming, even at long distance, because of that dispersion with the spotter plane, like you'll still land salvos like really accurately most of the time, unless RNG just completely trolls you. But as long as you're focusing on your angling and utilizing your guns, she has really good reverse firing angles, or rear firing angles, is how I want to say that. So that's something else that I found that's quite convenient here with the Lauria. That being said, we're going to wrap this video up, so I hope you liked it today. It went a little bit longer than I anticipated, but there's just a lot to talk about the ship, and I'd rather just go ahead and get it all done here in this video. Tomorrow we'll do the upgrade commander build video here on the Lauria. So if you liked today's video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe if you do want to see more. If you're subscribed, thanks so much. I really appreciate it, and we'll catch you next time. Take care.